The US president is at it again. Once again, President Trump, like his predecessors, has proven that he does not regard African countries. But if we are being honest, who can blame him? Recently, Trump's administration released the 2025 list of eligible countries for the US visa-free program. This list was recently updated, and looking at the list of countries, Africans made a startling discovery. All 54 African countries were exempted. While this is not anything new, it just reinforces the perception that Western countries have about the US. But that's not all. Trump is also proposing a total travel ban on about 41 countries, some of which are from Africa. But the question is, why have Africans been exempted from this program, and what is the implication? Let's find out. The US Visa-Free Program, officially known as the Visa Waiver Program, is a unique opportunity for citizens of select countries to travel to the United States for tourism or business without needing a visa. In simple terms, those who are eligible can visit the US without needing a visa. This year, the new administration of President Trump updated the list of eligible countries. Citizens of these countries benefit from the ability to stay in the US for up to 90 days without the need to apply for a visa, providing significant convenience for international travelers. However, the list of participating countries has seen both changes and familiar inclusions, sparking conversation around this year's adjustments. The list comprises of 40 nations from Europe, Asia, and parts of the Middle East. The most notable change for the 2025 USA visa-free list is the exclusion of the United Kingdom. Despite this, the UK remains eligible for the program under specific conditions, which still offer a degree of access for travelers. Another notable change is the inclusion of Romania in the list of eligible countries. This means that Romanian citizens will now be able to visit the US for up to 90 days for tourism or business without the need for a visa. The addition of Romania highlights Romania's growing diplomatic ties with the US and its improvements in meeting the strict security standards required for the Visa Waiver Program. Romania's inclusion signals the US government's positive assessment of the country's border security and cooperation. But our main concern about the list is the exclusion of all 54 African countries. Interestingly, since the inception of the program, no African country has been included. However, the exclusion of all 54 African countries reflect the ongoing challenges African nations face in securing easier access to the US. For years, visa rejection rates for African applicants have been on the rise, with US authorities citing concerns over immigration violations, fraud, and security risks. Reports indicate that in 2023, nearly 60% of all students from African countries who applied to study at universities in the US were denied the requisite F1 visa. Since Trump's return to office, his administration has doubled down on strict border control and mass deportations, with African and Latin American immigrants bearing the brunt of these policies. Currently, thousands of undocumented African immigrants in the US could now face deportation under these renewed crackdowns. Reports also revealed that with high numbers of visa overstays, asylum seekers or economic instability tend to face stricter entry requirements. Additionally, weak diplomatic ties and security concerns can lead to higher rejection rates. The US visa-free program is designed to encourage tourism and business, but the continued exclusion of African nations raises serious questions about the fairness of US immigration policies and the state of its relationship with Africa. But the Trump administration is not stopping there. According to reports, the Trump administration is poised to unveil an expansive new travel ban targeting citizens from up to 43 countries, including a significant number of African nations. According to a draft proposal revealed in a report published by the New York Times on March 14, 2025, the plan marks a broader approach than the travel restrictions imposed during Trump's first term, raising concerns about its implications for global mobility and international relations. The draft, reportedly developed by diplomatic and security officials, categorizes countries into 3 tiers. These are red, orange, and yellow. Each of these levels has varying levels of restriction. Tier red is the most severe, and it imposes a total ban on entry for citizens of 11 countries, including 3 African nations: Libya, Somalia, and Sudan. Tier orange has an additional 10 countries. In this category, visas would be sharply restricted, limiting entry primarily to affluent business travelers. This means ordinary citizens from these countries cannot visit the US. The only people permitted to visit the US are wealthy businessmen. African countries in this category include Eritrea, Sierra Leone, and South Sudan. The last category, which is also the largest, is Tier Yellow. This category grants 60 days for 22 countries to address alleged deficiencies in security vetting or risk escalation to stricter tiers. These countries are Angola, Benin, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Cape Verde, Chad, Republic of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gambia, Liberia, Malawi, Mali, Mauritania, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Sao Tome and Principe, Vanuatu, and Zimbabwe. Following the circulation of the information on social media, many Africans shared various reactions, largely urging African countries to largely focus on self-development. One user said, "Funny thing is, citizens from the majority of the highlighted countries would most likely be refused visa 7 out 10 times. Banning would just be a message of, don't bother trying to attempt." Another user wrote, "Banning nearly half of African nations from entering the US is not about security, it's about discrimination. Africa is a vital part of the global community, and such policies only deepen division instead of fostering cooperation." Currently, the US government is yet to approve this list, but this move is simply an expansion of an executive order issued by Trump requiring intensified security vetting of any foreigners seeking admission to the US to detect national security threats. The order directed several cabinet members to submit by March 21st a list of countries from which travel should be partly or fully suspended because their vetting and screening information is so deficient. These stringent immigration policies that seem to target Africa point out how Trump views Africa. Unlike previous American leaders who have made an attempt to befriend the African continent, President Trump has largely ignored Africa since his return to the US presidency. In fact, one might say that all his moves since he became president have targeted Africa, although not directly. If you can recall, on the very first day as president of the US, Trump signed over 200 executive orders on several issues ranging from trade to energy and climate to immigration. Some of these orders have, in a way, impacted African countries. Firstly, he suspended foreign aid. Trump's executive order freezes disbursement of all U.S. foreign development assistance for 90 days pending a review of programmatic efficiencies and ensuring that disbursements are aligned with the foreign policy of the President of the United States. According to Trump, the foreign aid industry and bureaucracy are not aligned with American interests, and in many cases antithetical to American values. Under the executive order, all department and agency heads with responsibility for the U.S. foreign development assistance programs shall immediately pause new obligations and disbursement of development assistance funds to foreign countries, non-governmental organizations, international organizations, and contractors. As you know, a couple of African countries have been recipients of U.S. foreign aid. Secondly, Trump's plans to establish an external revenue service could affect the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which grants African countries duty-free access to the American market. Thirdly, Trump withdrew from the WHO. The U.S. has been the WHO's top donor and partner, contributing $1.284 billion during the 2022-2023 biennium. The withdrawal of U.S. funding will negatively impact the WHO and its partners to identify and respond to emergencies across the world and advance other key global health priorities. Analysts have said that the withdrawal of the U.S. from WHO will make Africa face heightened health risks. The WHO has helped fight against certain diseases such as malaria and HIV. Now, aside from Trump's executive orders, Trump has never made any attempt to build diplomatic relations with any African country. This played out during his first term, and now in his second term, the only diplomatic relation he has had was with South Africa. But we can't even call that building diplomatic relations. In the second month of his tenure, Trump falsely called out the South African government for confiscating land from the white minority group. Although his claims have been concluded as false, Trump has not come out to apologize for making false claims against the South African government. Instead, he suspended aid to South Africa, which has been used in the health sector for HIV/AIDS patients. Additionally, President Trump is considering downsizing U.S. Africa Command. Now, this is quite serious and points to the fact that Trump doesn't want to have anything to do with African countries. You see, the U.S. Africa Command is a military organization that answers directly to the U.S. government regarding Africa's affairs. It was created by U.S. President Bush in 2007 to promote the national interest of the United States in Africa. Since its formation, every successive American presidency has expanded the U.S. Africa Command. It was a means to strengthen the U.S. military presence in Africa. But now, the administration of President Trump is considering downsizing it. According to CNBC, the proposed move is to transfer AFRICOM to a sub-command position under European Command. Two U.S. officials familiar with the discussions disclosed that the proposal is under consideration, and some U.S. defense officials are already in favor of the move. However, those who oppose the idea argue that the plan would reduce the influence of the U.S. military in Africa, creating a vacuum for Russia and China to fill. While it's not yet clear whether it would be shut down, the fact that President Trump is even considering it speaks volumes. It speaks to the fact that Trump doesn't want to have anything to do with the African continent. Interestingly, this attitude of Trump is not new. In 2018, he referred to African countries in derogatory terms and didn't develop any relationship with Africa. So the question is why? Why doesn't President Trump have any regard for Africa? Well, the answer can be gleaned from the reason why Trump did not invite any African country to his inauguration. As the day to Trump's inauguration approached, many African leaders, including Nigeria and Mozambique, expressed interest in attending the event. This was confirmed by an article published by the New York Post on January 11, 2025, under the headline, "Foreign Leaders Desperately Jockeying for Invite to Trump's Inauguration, They Are Going Crazy." A registered foreign agent was quoted as saying, "They are all going crazy. Chile, Peru, Nigeria, Mozambique." The agent added that the leaders were champing at the bit to attend. Unfortunately, none of them were invited. At his inauguration, Trump made a profound statement. He said, "If after 50 years of independence you have not built the necessary infrastructure for your people, are you human? If you sit on gold, diamonds, oil, uranium, iron, copper, silver, magnesium, crude oil, and gas, if your people die of hunger, without health, and with nothing to live on, with terrible education, do you feel human? If you stay in power, you buy weapons abroad to kill your own citizens, are you human? If you despise and shoot your own citizens like nothing, who will respect them? If you become a thief in your own country, stealing resources destined for your country, while most of your brothers are starving, miserable, and living poorly, is that being human?" This statement lies at the crux of the matter. It's been more than 60 years since most African countries gained independence, yet not much has changed. While there is no doubt that the West has a huge part to play in this situation, the fact of the matter is that a strong leader would have no regard for those who continue to play the victim. Most African leaders and African politicians are corrupt. They bleed money from the economy and redirect funds meant for developmental projects into their personal accounts. Most times these accounts are set up in the West, and we have heard cases where the funds are seized by the foreign government. The situation of things is bad, which is why some Africans are no longer patriotic. They cannot fully defend their countries. The young ones are looking for opportunities to flee to the West. Some of them even follow dangerous routes and end up dying in the process. So yes, the West exploited and is still exploiting the continent. But we cannot close our eyes to the contributions of Africa's unpatriotic and weak leaders. The most annoying thing is that these leaders are very good at talking and lamenting the state of the continent, forgetting their role in it. The truth is that things will not change unless African leaders do better. The West will continue to disrespect and disregard the continent unless African leaders show some backbone. Take a look at Trump, for example. He is certainly not a weak leader. Trump has launched an agenda known as American First, and he has started implementing visible policies in this regard. Most countries might be affected by some of his policies, but Trump doesn't care. He is all about America. He is a strong leader doing what he believes is best for his people. The question is, why can't African leaders do the same? Think about it. If African countries were as developed as the West, African leaders would have had a say in global affairs. If African countries were as developed as the West, Africans would not be regarded as dirt by the West. If African countries were as developed as the West, young Africans would not see any need to use illegal means to get to the West in search of greener pastures. If African countries were as developed as the West, perhaps a couple of African countries would have been part of the US visa-free program. When will things change? In our opinion, President Trump's presidency and his moves since he became president are a call to African leaders to look inward. What the continent needs currently are strong leaders who can make bold decisions. Honestly, the situation is pathetic, but thankfully, we have strong leaders like President Traore of Burkina Faso, Assimi Goïta of Mali, and General Tiani of Niger. These leaders have given us hope that everything is not so bad. It's no wonder then, these leaders have been described by some Western politicians as sophisticated. Since they came into power, they have exhibited a level of patriotism and love for their country. These leaders have done far better than those so-called weak democratic leaders who are only interested in their bellies. Agree that President Traore is an exemplary, disciplined, and patriotic leader. Just like every strong leader, he has been doing what he knows is right for his country. Western media can call him a dictator, but Traore is exactly what Burkina Faso needs currently. Unlike other African leaders, Traore has a vision. The same vision that was established by Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader, Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara was a passionate African leader who desired to see Burkina Faso free from the shackles of the West. This was his vision, which he voiced out aloud and stood by. It's no wonder he was hated by the West, but he was a strong leader. French President François Mitterrand once called Sankara a difficult character after a discussion with him. The Western world, especially France, did not like him for several reasons. First, Sankara made it clear in speeches and interviews that Burkina Faso would no longer follow orders from Paris, Washington, or other Western capitals. Secondly, he stated that Burkina Faso would assert its sovereignty by establishing relations with all nations in the world, including those hostile to the West, such as Cuba, China, North Korea, and the Soviet Union. Thirdly, Sankara said Burkina Faso would stand in solidarity with and sometimes directly support oppressed peoples and liberation movements around the world, in line with revolutionary ideals. Fourth, Burkina Faso would promote true Pan-African unity, expressed through concrete actions by African governments and peoples, not just occasional statements. Sankara stood by his words and was able to achieve food self-sufficiency without the help of the West. Unfortunately, he was killed by France with the help of Blaise Compaoré, his friend who turned out to be another African leader. You can clearly see how African leaders work with the West to jeopardize their countries. Imagine if Blaise Compaoré had stood with Sankara and rejected the greed of power. Sankara would have lived long enough to truly transform Burkina Faso. The worst part is that after Blaise took over power, he couldn't even continue to implement the policies that Sankara pursued. He reversed everything and became a French puppet. It is exactly the same way that the worst dictatorial president of Congo, Mobutu, together with another Congo politician, Tshombe, worked with the US to assassinate Patrice Lumumba. They beat him, shot him dead, and poured acid on his body to dissolve it. 1 year later, Mobutu became a CIA asset and with the help of the US became the president of Congo for the next 37 years. We have seen this play out over and over again. The truth is that nothing will change unless Africans stand up to change things. The African continent will continue to be regarded as less by the rest of the world unless African leaders make a conscious decision to be strong and change things. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and share this video.